This video was going to initially be kind of going after Joe Manchin, making the argument that whether you like Joe Biden, dislike Joe Biden, whether you think Joe Biden has a good policy, whether you think Joe Biden's policy is lacking, whether you think Joe Biden's policy is too much, from just a purely political angle. Let's say you're floating above it like a spirit or like some kind of, I don't know, a ghost or something. And you're detached from what you're seeing. It's just man versus another man with a sword that are not entirely going after one another, even though there's certain things that they try to fight around. But in this very specific instance, if you're looking at it like that, and you're not looking at good, bad, right, wrong, and you see Democrats trying to pass a particular agenda, and you continuously see Joe Manchin coming in and putting the kibosh on that agenda, well, in a weird way, you have this kind of thing where something needs to take place regarding Manchin. And this video was going to be basically that Biden, by not dealing with Manchin the first time around with the $15 an hour minimum wage, has basically created a monster, God King Manchin, that anything that Biden wants to get done has to go through Manchin. And as I thought about that, I thought to myself, Manchin is doing his job. Not necessarily a good job for West Virginia. He's doing the job to whatever he believes that job is. And in that specific context, this is politics. He's wielding power that he has at his disposal. And the key point about wielding power like this is he's okay doing it. He has no compunction about it. He doesn't think twice about it. He would say in a heartbeat, yeah, I'm not going with that. And just leave. Now, on some level, I have this belief that Manchin and Biden are working in tandem on this because Biden, I don't believe for one moment, has changed stripes as he got into office. And Manchin may be his limiting factor where he could just kind of blame Manchin for the stuff that wasn't able to get accomplished. The Republican Party at this point is a non-factor. If you notice, in the beginning, Joe Biden was able to use budget reconciliation to pass his plan. He didn't get rid of the filibuster because Joe Manchin, well, in part, doesn't want to get rid of the filibuster. And I don't think Joe Biden even wants to get rid of the filibuster. Again, Joe Biden, Manchin being a limiting factor in Congress, that's not really a limiting factor at all. They just have this level of agreement. You have Manchin, who wasn't on board for $15 an hour minimum wage and pushed the bill back to the House, no issue in doing it, in which the House, being submissive, gave in. And at the point where they gave in $15 an hour now was moved. The wage was taken down from $2,000 to $1,400. That, 30 X number of percent, 30 million people didn't get because of it. These were things that Democrats were negotiating with themselves and negotiating themselves down. Republicans were a non-factor because Democrats were using budget reconciliation, and they have 50 senators plus one Kamala Harris, vice president. Joe Manchin, however, in the context of that budget reconciliation, they need every vote. And because they need every vote, the squeaky wheel of the bunch, the Manchin, can step out and says, yes, I am not on board for this or that particular reason. Yeah, you could come to our office and negotiate, and he'd leave. And they would have to go to his office and negotiate. I'm just pointing out how he has no issue doing that. And yet, it seems that progressives have severe qualms in doing something like that in the House. What was stopping the lefties in the House from forcing the vote when it came down to Nancy Pelosi? Nothing, just fear and cowardice. Nothing. What was the issue that prevented crashing this bill and putting the $15 an hour minimum wage back into the bill in the same way that Manchin did it? Nothing. Cowardice, maybe complicity with the party at that point, maybe identifying with the party at that point. If it's anything like the article that was written, it seems like there's more complicity and agreement with the party than people initially anticipated with the AOCs of the world. In this very specific instance, though, I'm just pointing something out. Manchin, whatever you want to think of him, is using brute force politics in the way that politics was supposed to be played. Why wouldn't you do that? If you had the capacity to change a vote to get something that you wanted in that bill or something that you hated out of that bill, why wouldn't you use your political leverage to do that if your vote was a crucial factor in getting that bill passed? And I am making the point that that dynamic is no different whether it's one Joe Manchin or whether it's 6 members of the squad that refuse to capitulate and allow that bill to get over the finish line if it doesn't have $15 an hour in the bill. Pay attention to Manchin. That's my point. Manchin and Joe Biden at this point, Biden wants to pass his infrastructure bill now. Now, this is another $2 trillion bill. Manchin looks at the bill and says, yeah, we're not going to raise the income tax rates to that high. I'm uncomfortable with that. Which means right off the bat, Biden needs 50-50. Oh, that's the other point. The Democratic Party was able to get the parliamentarian to give them a win in an arcane, ancient rule in the Senate. Now, none of this stuff is real. So calling this arcane and ancient doesn't really mean anything either, all that much. Just that the rule existed, the rule is on the books, but the rule wasn't necessarily used. And I got to be honest, I never even heard of this rule. But basically, budget reconciliation can take place more than once because the next item that will be used for budget reconciliation is just basically being encompassed into the first one. It's almost like it's a pursuant to. So you've had the first one, and this one is just an addendum or an add-on to the previous budget reconciliation, allowing you to use the same precedent that you did for the first one. So think of it this way. They passed budget reconciliation the first time around. The parliamentarian is asked, can we use this rule to allow us to use the next bill that we pass as an extension of the first? She says yes. So they would prefer to give Republican support. But it's very possible, since Mitch McConnell had basically said, yeah, you're not getting our support on this, that Democrats can end up negotiating with themselves again, negotiating themselves down again, because Joe Biden doesn't deal with Joe Manchin. And this is coming from somebody who said the bill is inadequate in and of itself in regards to its scale. It should be bigger than this. But whether I think it should be bigger or smaller is kind of besides the fact that whatever political leader, you could be Sanders, you could be Ronald Reagan, you could be, I don't know, Donald Trump. If you have a Senate member that is holding up your progress, and you honestly did believe in that progress, you have to nip that in the bud. You have to show up at that senator's place of residence, summon that senator to your place of residence, meaning the presidency, get on the bully pulpit and go after the guy, be able to speak extemporaneously off the top of your head about things to undermine that position, to put his position in Congress in jeopardy as a result of that. And unless you're willing to do that, that guy is going to retain the deal bringer, or at the very least, the final say in the matter. Joe Biden should have put a knee in Joe Manchin's groin the first time he pulled this with the bill that they passed last time, the stimulus. And now he's doing it again. My only point to lefties is, if you're a left Democrat, I suppose, you probably get annoyed at Manchin for doing this. But what he's doing is basically what you should be doing. You shouldn't get mad at him about it. You should sit down and take notes. He has objectives. Do you have objectives that you want to accomplish? Yay or nay? If that answer is yes, okay, how do you accomplish those objectives? That's where you start, right? And Joe Manchin's part is, well, there are things that I don't want to take place. Well, whether you don't want it to take place or whether you do want it to take place, it's something that you want to happen in the larger world. You want healthcare, supposedly. You want education to be free of charge, supposedly. You want a Green New Deal, supposedly. And if you want these things, how are you going to get these things? And are you going to get these things by basically doing the same thing that the left has always did when they're just complicit and work behind Democrats? You've had multiple opportunities to flex your strength. And in a way that you may turn around and say, well, we couldn't do that. Well, Joe Manchin just did that. Joe Manchin just did that twice. He did it once on the $15 an hour minimum wage, gutting 40 million people who were supposed to get that bill, and who basically the lefties, supposedly the squad in the House, didn't do shit to defend the $15 an hour in that bill. You just let it slide. And my thing is, if Manchin could do it, why couldn't you? Manchin set the precedent of what could be done. And so he did it. And you can make a case that says, well, the president wasn't backing us. So what? So what? Everybody have their own machinations in regards to what they're trying to accomplish. If yours is a $15 an hour minimum wage, it was there for the taking. And your response to it is, I'm going to let it slide for the issue of democratic unity. That is an utter betrayal. That is a betrayal. What Manchin is doing and who he's doing it for is detestable from the standpoint of the working class. By the same token, he seems to understand something that the left doesn't. That politics is not on your knees begging your opposition for help and assistance. In a situation like that, you're never going to get that help and assistance unless that help and assistance is in the interest of the person that's imparting it. You need to have some level of leverage and some level of control to your side that you can affect. Even if that is bashing yourself in the head with a rock, so all of you lose, that is still a power, and that is an option depending upon what they're doing and what is taking place. This is very important to understand. And yet, the left doesn't seem to get it. Manchin does. Manchin even makes the argument at some point using the term leverage, because he's right. He has leverage. Yeah, he even uses the term leverage in this case. My point is very basic here. Pay attention to him. Look at what he's doing. And in the same way that he's doing this, you have every right and power to cobble together your forces to do the same thing. If Manchin is willing to crash a bill, you should be willing to do the same thing. If his level of commitment to bashing workers is of such that he's willing to screw over 40 million people, then your impetus, your feel, your gusto to defend those workers and defend that $15 an hour should be equal to his task, come what may, in regards to the people who are in power in your party that may say something about you doing that. Point to Manchin and say, well, he's doing it. How are you looking at me? The president says he wants $15 an hour. Why are you looking at me? Manchin is doing this again with the infrastructure bill. That's my point. And so the question becomes, what is in the bill? And Manchin has talked about the corporate tax rate in this very specific instance. But there's some other items that Manchin is going to be a warrior for the rich, looking for ways to water the bill down. And the goal of this is not to get it's not bipartisanship. The goal is to get shit passed. And in the case of Manchin, he seems to miss the goal. And I don't think he misses the goal at all. I think he's just working for a faction of a particular class that is not interested in that corporate tax rate going up, or for that matter of workers getting $15 an hour, or for any other item that will be to the benefit of the working class. Incrementalism. But in real terms, you had an option, you had an opportunity to make the life of 40 million people better. And Manchin took the time, his despised workers so much, that he took the time to kill the stimulus bill to send it back to the House of Representatives with the goal of getting them to take it out. Now, I think that that's just theater, that they knew they were going to take it out all along. I'm making the point that whether it was theater or not, that still was an opportunity to crash that bill in the way that Manchin crashed that bill and make your case. That seems to be lacking in our politics. Manchin has it in spades. Pay attention to Manchin. And if Manchin can do it, you damn sure can. Like, share,